Does this game have a lot of hype around it? Because if not, that's a real shame. I would put this right up with Mouthwashing, maybe even over Mouthwashing.
That honestly blew me away with how good it was. I think it's probably the best indie horror game I've played this year.
Mole is officially the highest rated horror game of 2026, and today I'm breaking down exactly why, the 8 reasons why Mole is an indie masterpiece. But to understand how it pulled this off, we first have to look at how it was made in the first place. If you look at the landscape of indie horror games over the past few years, it's clear to see that we're in a massive boom. The genre has this specific pull right now, drawing in players and essayists alike who just want to let themselves be immersed in an experience. Mole is one of those games. It isn't shy about the inspiration it shares with titles like Iron Lung or Mouthwashing. Consider what a game like Iron Lung actually does to you. It relies on taking away your control. The developers intentionally trap you inside a space with little to no legroom. It's simple, but clever, and it evokes this suspenseful experience that takes advantage of your claustrophobia. This theme of isolation worked wonders, with the game becoming a sensation that had players hooked in the world of Iron Lung. It even got a movie adaptation earlier this year. Mouthwashing, on the other hand, took that formula and shifted the focus. I've made multiple videos on the game, and if you're interested, the link will be down below or at the end of the video. But instead of relying purely on physical isolation, the horror of Mouthwashing pivoted into the psychological decay. You watch as characters mentally fall apart in real time, with hallways that seemingly never end and grotesque monsters that are made to represent the most deepest parts of our fears and guilt. Mole takes this idea of isolation and mental decay from both games, and it does this really well through its dreamlike levels and cramped setting, with the game taking place in a drilling machine built to descend deep below, following whatever it is that is calling to them. Most interpretations of the post-apocalypse lean heavily into Western or American aesthetics. Mole does this differently. It drops players into a 1980s dieselpunk version of Soviet Russia. In this world, the surface has been destroyed by never-ending wars, with the most apparent result being the depletion of energy sources. So, instead of the space race that we had in real life, humanity is forced to dig downwards. A government-funded organization named Strata drives this ascent, and you can see the propaganda mirroring old Soviet-era slogans plastered all over the walls of your vessel. Like this one poster that frames the act of digging as an honorable duty, one that people do for the future of the state, for the children, for tomorrow. They conduct drilling operations deep into Earth, searching not only for fuel, but also answers. They dig deeper and deeper, fully aware that something else is down there, something ancient, patiently waiting. They call it the White Rabbit Signal, and just by going near it, causes you severe hallucinations and compels you to do one thing: dig. While the people of Iron Lung dealt with desperation and Mouthwashing explored the concept of corporate neglect, Mole is about the intentional neglect, with society making it clear that your life holds zero value. Furthermore, instead of relying on USBs, the entire game operates on cassette tapes. It says a lot about a world when its most critical technology is made out of cheap plastic, because cassettes aren't just passive audio logs in this world. They function as your ID badges, your room keys, your data drives, and as your main method of communication with the surface. Cheap as they are, this return to analog technology makes the gameplay very tactile and interactive. It forces the player to interact with the ship's controls manually to survive. And as the story progresses, the utility of these cassette tapes take on a much more darker, sinister purpose regarding people. As you get deeper, you realize they're storing something a lot worse. Many narrative horror titles eventually fall into the trap of becoming walking simulators. You walk down a dark hallway, press a button or two, and simply watch the horror happen to you. Even standout games like Mouthwashing, it can frequently feel more like watching a movie than a video game. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does undermine the strength of video games compared to any other form of media. Their interactivity. Mole rejects that passive design by demanding your immediate attention. As the only living pilot of a rapidly deteriorating drilling machine, you're forced to manage the ship's convoluted controls while knowing that you're being hunted. You're forced into the open to calculate coordinates, run manual diagnostics, and manage key ship controls while listening to footsteps get closer. And it's not like these puzzles are easy, they still require some brain power to do. But the sheer panic of trying to solve a complex puzzle, knowing your back is completely vulnerable, is what adds to that suspense. In most cases, the monster never even attacks, but when it does, it's horrifying. Now yes, Mole does have a few linear walking simulator moments, but it uses them tastefully as momentary breather, giving you a chance to absorb the story before putting you right back into the middle of things. Mole's narrative features many themes, including trauma, grief, and responsibility, very similar to Mouthwashing's themes, but with a twist. From the very beginning, the game forces you to doubt your own perspective. It's introduced early on in the story that the white rabbit signal has affected you, since almost immediately, your first scene in the game involves a dreamlike meadow where you proceed to dig up a grave. This sequence establishes the baseline for just how vivid these hallucinations can be, and the signal is much more ominous than it initially seems. It leads you to committing actions you didn't even know you were doing. It can connect with you, sympathize with your past, making you believe that this is what you always wanted. As you manage the ship's maintenance, you might suddenly step through a door and realize that you're walking straight into a classroom, but not just any classroom, the one from your own childhood. The transitions are seamless, making it impossible to distinguish between a real monster, a repressed memory, or a forced hallucination. It blurs the lines of reality, throwing you into psychological hoops. This entity, this monster, it tricks you into advancing its own goals. You never know where the actual monsters are because your mental state is just as badly ruined. In the end, the act of drilling down becomes a literal and psychological descent into madness. Now, in most modern horror, this descent into madness, specifically media that covers the idea of grieving, treats it as a result, the plot twist at the end of the story that ties it all together, the monster you never truly wanted to face, the answer to all our questions. Like in Silent Hill, where the final twist reveals that the monster of the story was your own suppressed guilt. While masterpiece games like Silent Hill 2 earned this twist, modern horror has turned it into a gimmick. But Mole drops that entirely. The game is upfront about the protagonist being a grieving father. There is no secret to uncover. Instead of hiding the trauma, it becomes the force fueling your descent of the game. It's a representation of denial of reality. The protagonist is quite literally burying himself in his work, isolating himself from a world where his son is gone. Every time the player pushes the drill deeper, every time you listen to that voice, you're actively participating in his refusal to process reality. By removing the twist, the game allows the tension to turn into a slow burn of how loss and grief can affect a person emotionally and mentally, especially when a cosmic entity twists and corrupts that very idea. As mentioned in the intro, Mole currently holds the crown for the highest rated horror game of 2026 on Steam. As of early July, it's sitting at a comfortable 98% positive rating. To put that into perspective, the reigning AAA giant of the year, Resident Evil Requiem, is sitting at a 96%. Now obviously, we're comparing 1,400 reviews to over 50,000. Requiem is a massive 40-hour AAA experience backed by an industry company, with Mole being more of a budget-friendly indie experience. The fact that a tiny studio can stand shoulder to shoulder with Capcom's flagship franchise and actually win is a statement to the game's design. It sets a massive bar for the rest of the year's releases, And it remains to be seen if the upcoming heavy hitters like Alien Isolation 2 will actually be able to live up to the standard that this indie game just set. What anchors all of these mechanics is how Mole treats its runtime. It handles the heavy, tragic narrative of a father mourning his son with care. But crucially, it does this without artificially inflating the experience. Mole proves that games are capable of so much more depth than people give it credit for. If you want to play a horror game filled with deep lore in an interesting world, and it is a solid 4-hour experience, then Mole is that game for you.